Are you brave enough to venture to some of the most hazardous locations in the world? If you are, then join me as we journey into what makes these 10 islands deadly. Rambo Island. We'll start this video with a tale that might be apocryphal, but it's so gripping the horrors recounted in it still resonate to this day. As the tale goes, at the tail end of the Second World War, British troops made headway to Rambo Island just off the coast of Burma, intending to establish a new airbase. Thing is, the island was already occupied by around 1,000 Japanese soldiers. Almost as soon as the British landed, a great battle ensued. The Japanese fought desperately, but the British forces were simply too overwhelming. This forced them to make a retreat. Now, if you think this battle gave Rambo its dangerous reputation, think again though. On the retreat, the Japanese had to traverse a dense mangrove swamp that covers around 10 miles of the island. Unbeknownst to them, waiting for them were adversaries more lethal than any British soldier: saltwater crocs. These vicious man-eaters decimated the fleeing Japanese, and according to legend, out of the 1,000 that fled, only 500 of them made it out of that swamp alive. It was these survivors who told the world what happened in these swamps, and although these stories were never confirmed, you gotta admit they still send chills up your spine. Rambo Island to this day is called home by many saltwater crocs, probably still waiting for their next human buffet. Paveglia Island. From dangers that can be seen, we now move on to forces that, although unseen, can still impact. It impacted people pretty negatively, that's easy to say, and these forces converged on a small island located in a lagoon in Italy called Paveglia Island. Although small, its history is both dark and deep. It started its journey into infamy in 1776 when it was used as a quarantine for people with the bubonic plague, and that went on for more than 100 years. Many years after this, mental hospitals were established there, making it a home not only for the mentally impaired but also for the criminally insane. Although unconfirmed, reports of patients being abused and even murdered on the island became news in Venice. It was so prevalent that many say it was the main driving force for the hospital being closed down in 1968. The island's been empty ever since. Empty, that is, for the many lost, evil, and violent spirits that call the island home today. At least that's what believers of the paranormal say, though. Many paranormal investigators have visited the place once and vowed never to return. They say they were violently attacked by these spirits, even leaving physical marks. Some of them have even claimed to have been possessed by unknown entities, making them feel violent thoughts and do violent things. Whatever is in Paveglia Island right now is certainly enough to make the place one of the most dangerous islands in the world. Stromboli Island. Paveglia isn't alone in its infamy, because in Italy as well lies an island whose danger hasn't only claimed lives but displaced the lives of thousands more. Stromboli Island is the site of one of the most active volcanoes in the world. Mount Stromboli, as it's called, has been erupting non-stop for almost 90 years. Despite that though, around 300 people call the island home. Tourists also frequent the spot. After all, how often are you allowed to watch an erupting volcano? However, these people are always in grave danger as long as they're on the island. Back in the early 1900s, the island had around 4,000 people living on it. However, a massive eruption occurred as well as a massive tsunami, hence the people living there departed for the US and Australia. Heck, the volcano's still claiming life. 2019, 2 massive explosions shook the island to its core. The disaster killed 1 tourist while 70 others were evacuated. The Farallon Islands. In San Francisco, California, just 26 miles from the Golden Gate Bridge, lies a group of islands that's home to one of the most diverse ecosystems on Earth. People aren't allowed to set foot on these islands as they're classified as a wildlife refuge. However, no one goes there even before it gained that status, and that's because the waters surrounding the islands have a deadly reputation, so much so that the islands have earned a sinister nickname, the Devil's Teeth. These sharp, jagged rocks are a nightmare to navigate and have claimed many boats in the past. In 2012, a yacht named the Slow Speed Chase encountered strong waves around the island and then capsized the boat. Only 2 of the 8 crew members survived, and if a hapless sailor does manage to survive the rocks and the churning waters, he's faced with another deadly problem: sharks. The waters around the Devil's Teeth are teeming with them. Karnak Island. Australia is home to a lot of deadly animals. It's there where you can find the world's most venomous, the island tapir. However, tapir bites are few and far between. When it comes to snake bite fatalities in Australia, the tiger snake is king. Tiger snake venom is extremely toxic and will cause kidney damage and eventually renal failure and death. And although they can be found near every large population center in the country, the most notorious population of tiger snakes resides on Karnak Island, a 19-acre of land off the coast of Perth. The island is home to around 400 tiger snakes. Legend has it that the island was actually snake-free until a traveling snake charmer named Rocky Vane dumped all his tiger snakes on the island. The reason for that is because apparently they bit and killed his wife. Being so isolated, the snakes on Karnak evolved a bit differently from their mainland counterparts. They're significantly bigger and have larger heads and jaws. Most of the snakes on this island are also blind, their eyes having been pecked out by seagulls. This snake population is the main reason why people stay away from Karnak Island, but if you live dangerously, the place is open to tourists. Dead Man's Island. Now, there might be nothing on Dead Man's Island today that can actually kill you, but ask anybody who's been there at least once and they'll tell you that they'll be scarred for life. The island, located in Kent, England, is littered with over 200 human skeletons, giving the place its name. Real question, how did they get there? Well, if you were a prisoner 200 years ago, the only time you'll see Dead Man's Island shore is when you're dead. Yeah, the entire island's become a cemetery for prisoners who died in prison. The skeletons stayed underground for a long time, but soil erosion exposed them, giving the island a rather eerie feel. So eerie that people who visit the place go home either horrified or affected negatively. Maybe it's the fact that a vast majority of the people buried there were convicted for petty crimes such as pickpocketing, which just adds to the overall sadness of the place. Thankfully, this island is not open to the public, but research groups can get permission to go there. And now Atoll. The Coral Atoll, which consists of around 40 islands in the Pacific Ocean, is a casualty of war. While no battle was ever waged there, it could be argued that the place got it much worse. You see, this place was used for testing nukes. Hence the reason why the place is extremely dangerous, and when studies were conducted, it was discovered that some of the islands had radiation levels 10 times higher than that of Chernobyl. In one of the islands, Runnet Island to be specific, radiation levels were so high that a concrete dome had to be constructed to contain the radiation from the most radioactive parts. But here's the thing, rising water levels have started to compromise this holding container, increasing the risk of hazardous materials leaking out. This would wreak havoc on the lives of the atoll's residents. Yeah, some of these islands are actually inhabited. There's been people living there before the nuclear testing began, but they were evacuated before the first bomb was dropped. However, years after the war and the testing ended, some people have gone back to live on the islands. These people are living in a place where something is slowly killing them. Miyake Jima. Can you imagine living in a place where you can die from pulmonary edema at any given time? Well, people living on the Japanese island of Miyake Jima don't have to imagine that nightmare they're living it. The island plays host to Mount Oyama, a volcano that has a temper. This mountain spouts out poisonous sulfuric gas, often without warning, and the volume of the gas it emits is so massive that major eruptions require evacuating all the residents from the island, with the latest large explosion happening in 2000. That being said, smaller eruptions do happen, but it's simply not feasible to do a massive evacuation every time this happens. So residents of the island have something in their bags that you won't see anywhere else: gas masks. This fact gave rise to the village of Miyake's ominous nickname, Gas Mask Town. North Sentinel Island. North Sentinel Island is home to the Sentinelese people, probably the last group of people never to be contacted by the outside world. Why? Well, it's not for lack of trying, as you'll find out later. It's that the Sentinelese for some reason hate visitors, and hate them enough to commit murder. No one knows how many of these people live on the island. Anthropologists estimate any number from 50 to 500. Thing is, no one can find them out for sure because any outsider who dared to land on the island and contact these people ended up dead. In 2018, a young missionary from the US named John Allen Chow landed on the island. He repeatedly ignored the warnings of the Sentinelese, and he paid for it with his own life. The islanders simply refuse any form of outside contact despite not being as remote as you might think. Their island is in the Bay of Bengal and is around 300 miles away from Myanmar. They continue living their lives traditionally, living in basic structures, riding dugout canoes, and are hunter-gatherers. Ilha de Comida Grande. And yes, I know I'm mispronouncing that. Think of this place as Brazil's version of Karnak Island. Thing is, instead of having only around 400 venomous snakes, this place boasts a population of between 2,000 to 4,000 vipers. That's why this place is known as Snake Island. The island houses the deadly golden lancehead viper, one of the most venomous snakes on the planet, with venom that's potent enough to kill a fully grown man in under an hour. The snakes have been there for a long while now, and while the place is currently devoid of humans, it was once inhabited by people. People have often wondered how the snakes got there, and legend has it that pirates put the snakes there to protect buried treasure. Reality is, rising water levels are to blame. You see, the island was once part of Brazil's mainland, but as the water levels rose, it became an island trapping the vipers there, where they flourished. As expected, these snakes evolved differently from their mainland cousins and fed exclusively on birds. However, birds on the island also evolved to avoid being caught by the Lancehead, so the snakes primarily feed on birds who come to visit. See you all next time!